More unrealistic body expectations for the youth. Wow. I wanted to start off this video with a joke, but the real joke is I never put this much effort in school book reports. Could you tell? Butt lovers, welcome back to another book report. I do all sorts of reading on this channel. The last nostalgic ones were for teen tabloids, theology books, and most successfully, frindle. But I also read the occasional yeehaw romance novel. It's always a trip. Today we are once again going down memory lane with Flat Stanley and company. But first, let's go over the specific series and artwork we will be seeing today. The original Flat Stanley that looked like this came out in 1964. And it would take almost 20 years for the sequel, Stanley and the Magic Lamp, to be published. There have been many illustrators throughout the years and many different versions of Stanley. From the original I showed you, to the French version entitled Flattened Clement. Then in 1998, we have Steve Bjorkman's illustrations, which look a little closer to the version I grew up with, that came out in 2002. Prior to researching for this video, I thought this guy was the only version, but turns out he wasn't even the latest. This version isn't even in print anymore. I had to buy a used box set, which includes the first, third, fifth, and sixth book in the series. And these are the four we'll be covering today, because let me tell you something, this guy? I've never seen this guy in my life. I don't know who the hell this is. No hate to the artist, obviously, but you guys know me. I'm nostalgic and sentimental and shit. And this is like a not my Roderick kind of moment. And that's not even the most recent one. Okay, so there's a total of 6 books in the original series written by the original author, Jeff Brown, before he passed away in 2003. Then, Flat Stanley's worldwide adventures ran from 2009 to 2018. And would you believe me if I told you there's a new STEM-related chapter book series entitled Flat Stanley's Adventures in Classroom 2E that's coming out this year in 2023. I was not expecting to learn that there are new Flat Stanley books coming out in 2023. This series is almost 60 years old. So today, as I keep saying, we're just covering the 4 I remember reading as a kid, but just know we're only scratching the surface of this flat-ass bitch. First off, I forgot this kid's full name was Stanley Lambchop, and my Greek ass of course thought of souvlaki. And that would be the most horrifying rendition yet. You've heard of Flat Stanley and Invisible Stanley. Now get ready for Stewart Stanley. It starts right away with the carnage. His brother is screaming and yelling, but they assure us Stanley was not hurt. In fact, he still would have been sleeping if he had not been woken by his brother's shout. "What's going on here?" he called out cheerfully from beneath the enormous board. How did Stanley not notice that a whole bulletin board fell on him? That is a comically heavy sleeper. Also, thank God they didn't pin things on there yet. Now get ready for Stab Stanley. So it's not just Stanley with a strangely optimistic outlook on all of this. His family is also weirdly chill about it. "Heavens," said Mrs. Lambchop. "Gosh," said Arthur. "Stanley's flat."
"As a pancake,"
said Mr. Lambchop.
"Darndest thing I've ever seen."
And this is where I realized that, like, even if I didn't do the research in the beginning, I would have figured out that it was written in the 60s. Like, when's the last time you heard somebody say, "Darndest thing I've ever seen"? Very 60s coded. Then the story goes on. "Let's all have breakfast," Mrs. Lambchop said. "Then Stanley and I will go see Dr. Dan and hear what he has to say." I guess that pancake comment, "Stanley's flat,"
"As a pancake,"
got her hungry because there is no sense of urgency. They go to the doctor. The doctor says, "Sometimes we doctors, despite all our years of training and experience, can only marvel at how little we really know." Which is the least assuring thing I've ever heard in my life. "Doc, am I gonna be okay?" "Maybe." "What do you mean, maybe?" "You can be fine, you can die, I don't know." But upon hearing this, his parents ask a very normal question. "How thick is he?" "Half an inch, apparently." Skinny legend. Chapter 2 opens with, "When Stanley got used to being flat, he enjoyed it," which is very vague. How much time has passed? But I can't even focus on that for too long because his little brother is jealous? So much so, he even tried to slide under a door, but he just banged his head. What an idiot. Bash yourself in the face with a bulletin board, then try again.
"Would you like to play a game? I have this huge bulletin board, and it's gonna fall on you, and you'll be flat."
How flat is he? Half an inch thick! One of the quirky flat ventures Stanley goes on is down into the sewer to get his mom's ring back. His mom cares about her ring so much, she sent her son into Pennywise's palace without a second thought. Which is an ongoing theme. They really don't care about this kid's safety. You've heard of Skewered Stanley and Stabbed Stanley. Now get ready for Stinky Stanley. Then some police officers make fun of the mother for standing over the grating, holding a string down into it. Here's a picture of it. Look at those snarky assholes. But then when the police officers see her flattened son emerge, they apologize for not believing her. People should think twice before making rude remarks, said Mrs. Lambchop, and then not make them at all. The policemen realized that was a good rule, and they said that they would try to remember it. Wow, I can't believe she fixed the police force by endangering her son and then having them do nothing. Also, you expect me to believe they saw a paper-thin boy emerge from the sewers and said, "Oh, my apologies, ma'am," instead of how a reasonable person would react, which would of course be something like this. "Oh my god, what the fuck?" Then we see the family's friend, Thomas Anthony Jeffrey, and they would have a friend that has 3 first names. They had an idea to mail Stanley so he can visit their friend in California. They sent him with an egg salad sandwich and milk, which seems like a biohazard. Also, they spelt out the lesson right here. Mr. Lambchop said it proved that jet planes were wonderful, and so was the postal service, and that this was a great age in which to live. Stanley thought so too. They would shit their pants at the idea of the internet. But also, dare I say, based. I absolutely love getting letters. We just got a letter. I wonder who it's from. There's a whole human boy in there. I love how often this book reassures us that Stanley is fine. He's not feeling any pain. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Oh, and in the mail, he didn't feel a bump. And when his dad rolled him up like a yoga mat, it felt great. In Chapter 3, Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop see their boring 3-dimensional son, Arthur, trying to flatten himself. And they say to Stanley, "Arthur can't help being jealous. Be nice to him. You're his big brother after all." Big brother? Look at me. I'm flat! How flat are you? Half an inch thick! So because the brother is jealous, Stanley offers to be a kite for him, which doesn't make sense to me. Like, hello, dude, you're flying. I'm more jealous now. Look at this iconic art. His brother left him alone in the air, which is how he got stuck in a tree, and his parents are only worried about how tough being a parent is. Arthur had apologized, but Stanley was still cross. Alone with Mr. Lambchop in the living room, Mrs. Lambchop sighed and shook her head. "You're at the office all day, having fun. You don't realize what I go through with the boys. They're very difficult." What the hell? Your kid was stuck in a tree. Make sure Stanley's okay. Why are you like, wham? Being a parent is so hard. I'm the one who really has it rough here. Your kid is mutilated. Maybe forever. Stop throwing a pity party for yourself. In Chapter 4, Stanley caught art museum thieves by pretending to be a painting. Why were his parents okay with this? He even overheard one of the criminals threatening to kill anyone who tried to stop them. You've heard of Flat Stanley, Invisible Stanley, Stabbed Stanley, Stinky Stanley. Get ready for Dead Stanley. Yeah, these are life-threatening situations. After catching the bad guys, he was a hero, but after his 15 minutes of fame were over, people started making fun of him for the first time ever in the book? After all the cool, heroic, skinny shit he was doing? I'm so confused. One of the insults was even, quote, "Hello, super skinny." Oh, was I accidentally insulting him this whole time?
Skinny shit, skinny legend.
Anyway, in the end, Stanley goes back to normal by being inflated by a bicycle pump. How is this not a horror novel? Is Stanley 99% air? No wonder he was flattened by something as light as a bulletin board. Also, if he's supposedly not flat in the end, explain this. That's right, we're talking about the Flat Stanley Project. The whole idea of the Flat Stanley Project started in 1995 by a Canadian teacher by the name of Dale Hubert. The premise was like that of a pen pal, but instead of just writing back and forth to each other, you have a cutout of Stanley and you track how many places he's been using photos. There's a whole website that tracked his most impressive adventures, and it's very amusing to look through because this guy might be like the most well-traveled person ever. Here he is with Jackie Chan. All the cutouts look really different, by the way. Here he is with Buzz Aldrin. No spoilers for Stanley in space, please. Here he is with Carrie Underwood in Iraq, surrounded by military people with guns. It's so random. He's met numerous politicians, including Hillary Clinton, Obama, Jeb Bush. I'm dying.
Please clap.
I don't care how many people will die. We need a show of our power. What? Oh, you want me to pose with a little paper boy? Okay. Yeah, anyway, drop the bomb. Photo ops with sketchy politicians aside, I really want to start this up again because even though we have the internet now, there's something just unmatched about seeing something that was in your hands, in somebody else's hands, thousands of miles away. So, YouTube community members, look out for a community tab post if you want this sent your way. Alright, up next, book 3. Stanley in space. So this starts off very abruptly with the president calling the lamb chops. And when Stanley thinks it isn't the real president of the United States, because why would he? The petty president then interrupts broadcasting of all channels to essentially say, yes, it really is me, don't hang up, you know who you are. Very threatening. For no reason. Also, isn't this book about mail? Like, look at the logo for the series. A Stanley Lamb Chop adventure. No one knows who the fuck Stanley Lamb Chop is, first of all. Just call him Flat Stanley. Even if he's not flat, just call him Flat Stanley. But anyway, I bring up this mail theme to point out that wouldn't it have been better if the President of the United States sent him an official letter invitation with, like, an official presidential seal? Wouldn't that fit the, like, feel of this series more, as opposed to doing, like, a really weird, threatening phone call? When the Lamb Chop family was at the White House with generic fictional president man, he greeted them by saying, "Bet you never thought when you woke up this morning that you'd get to meet me," which, like, is it just me or is that really douchey? I'm kind of a big deal. I'm the president of the United States. Ever heard of me? So when I read the title Stanley in Space, I thought they were visiting the moon or maybe Mars. Do you have any guesses where they're going? You're all wrong. The president is sending Stanley to Tyra, a planet where aliens have made contact with Earth. The president goes on to explain, wouldn't look peaceful to send soldiers or even scientists. Then I thought, what could be more peaceful than just an ordinary American boy? Why Stanley of all the American boys? Well, direct quote, it has to be someone who's already had adventure experience. What vague credentials? What's happening? So at this point, the Lamb Chop parents are finally concerned and ask if this is safe. No. But the president reassures the family that the aircraft is very safe. And they're convinced? What about the aliens? Yeah, they seem friendly, but what if they're lying? The only thing Stanley's family puts their foot down about is, if our son's gonna get killed by aliens in space, then we're going with him. Priorities. Give it up for the Lamb Chops. Let me just read you this one section really quickly. After weeks in space, the Lamb Chops remembered that gravity, the force that held things down, did not exist beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Took them weeks to figure that one out. Guys, I've never even been on an outer space adventure, and I know that right now. It would not take me that long. Silly story aside, look at this page, look at the art. I love it. I wish books for adults were this whimsical and fun. Page 43, guys, I can't believe I was right. I'm not even joking. The aliens are taking them prisoner. They were immediately threatened by the aliens. Unbreakable trapping cable? Prisoners? Surrender? The Lamb Chops could scarcely believe their ears. I don't call that peaceful, said Mrs. Lamb Chop. Our president has been misled. Why is that what you're worried about right now? They're all tied up and being threatened, and their first thought is, I can't believe they lied to our president. Poor president. He didn't deserve that. I'll just summarize the rest of this book, because if Stanley's physiology didn't change, then I don't really care. So the Tyra aliens are actually very small, so their threats were empty. They went on to explain that they only threatened them because they ran out of food and water and thought they could get some from the Earth through ransom. The family was immediately very understanding, so much so they even brought them back to Earth. Imagine if they were able to shrink and grow on command, and then as soon as they got to Earth, they were like,
Thanks for showing us the way!
And just turned into giants and destroyed everything, and just killed everyone. Ultimately, that didn't happen, but I still think they're way too trusting. Boop. Invisible Stanley. So, despite the artwork on the cover, he's not the balloon, he's holding the balloon. They just drew a face so they can keep track of where he is. He's not the balloon. His mom is just a really good artist. Like, that looks exactly like him, though. That's kind of wild that she got his looks down to a T. So how did this happen? Did the bulletin board crush him even harder? No, it's weirder than that. Stanley was watching lightning and eating raisins, as one does, and then the next morning he was invisible. Oh my god, like the title says. What's really interesting about this particular curse is that when he puts clothing on himself, they too become invisible. The family's lack of urgency continues as once again the mom suggests they finish their breakfast and then go to the doctor. So I have to ask, what situation would be dire enough for this mom to skip breakfast?
Mom, I'm dying!
Just let me finish my breakfast.
You need to call 911 now!
I'm eating my toast. So during the OG book, as I mentioned, the Doctor had no knowledge of flatness, but since then he's become more informed. He's read up about odd and peculiar cases. And in this case, he found a connection between weather, fruit, and people going invisible. See, nothing happened. This book is so stupid. Moving on, the family are rule followers to an infuriating degree. It's beyond goody two-shoes, it's goody six-shoes, because the only one with any sort of sense is actually the jealous brother. They were going to the movies and he was like, oh, we don't have to pay for Stanley. And they all gasped and guffawed like assholes. But that wouldn't be honest. That's deceitful. And they paid for 4 tickets. Why? Invisible shenanigans ensues as he helps a bullied kid ride his bike faster. He helps a cowardly man propose, accompanied by the most frightening picture. And magic tricks. But chapter 6, entitled The Bank Robbers, is where shit gets real. Look at this picture of them with guns. Dear God. But that isn't what shocked everyone. People cried out, "Lady bank robbers!" Which sounds like the beginning of a Fox News section about how feminism is making women criminals or something. You don't understand. If we let them out of the kitchen, they'll kill us! But it turns out, women criminals are a myth and a fairy tale. But what comes next, Fox News might latch on to even more because they disguise themselves in drag to avoid suspicion. Entirely unnecessary. Boo, tomato, tomato, tomato. Lip sync to It's Raining Men or else. Stanley helps the robbers get caught, as is the format with all of these books, and then his brother comes up with, I kid you not, the stupidest plan I've ever heard of in my life to help him become visible again. It's not even raining out, but he flickers a flashlight to resemble lightning, and they make storm sounds as Stanley once again eats raisins. And it works? Boo! Tomato, tomato, tomato! Have it actually rain! And lip sync to It's Raining Men, or else. As I was reading the Space Adventures and the Invisible Adventures, all I was thinking was the original Flat Stanley was better. So Flat, again, I had high expectations for. As you can see, it only has 1 post-it note. This was by far the worst book. I was so bored. So how do you become flat again? Everyone was like, was it that darn bulletin board again? And the parents were like, no, it's secure on the wall. Which is weird. Like, just get rid of it. But anyway, he was hit by a tennis ball, and at the same time, he backed into a shelf, making him flat. Again. Oh my god, like the title. So they went to the doctor, after breakfast, of course, and this time the doctor had an explanation. Remember, he's been reading up on it. He doesn't want to look like a fool again. The OBP, osteal balance point, a little-known anatomical feature. The human body, of course, is a complex miracle. Its skeleton is a delicate framework of supports and balances. The osteal balance point may occur almost anywhere in the upper torso. It is vulnerable only to the application of simultaneous pressures at 2 points, which vary depending on age and particular design. He got clapped. That would be a sick prank to play on this kid, is just going up to him and being like, your osteal balance point's about to be fucked. Boom, you're flat again. This kid's so fragile. Somebody keep an eye on him. The coolest thing they gave away right on the front page, like this part was great, but then the rest of the book, Stanley was just complaining. He's like, I don't want to do this again. And it was kind of a bummer. He saved his school bully from a collapsed building, and he doesn't even revel in the fact that he's doing something good. He's just like, I'm so sick of this shit. I wish I didn't have to save you right now. Fuck you. I like the way they drew him. He's really done. He's beyond done. Now get ready for depressed Stanley, I guess. So that's it, kind of. There's a musical, and I listened to some of the songs. They're interesting. There's a song called My Child is Flat, and the lyrics go, our child is flat, except his fingers, except his toes. Our child is flat, except his hair, and except his nose. Now, I know they're just going for rhymes, but that's simply not true. All of him became flattened. Don't mess with the Flat Stanley lore. So just like I did at the end of Frindle, I made my own song. I really hope you enjoy, butt lovers.
A boy with dreams, a boy like me. A boy flattened by a bulletin board in his sleep. His name is Stanley. If you are a half an inch thick, you'll fly like a kite and feel freaking sick. Your brother might be a jealous bitch, but he should, 'cause you caught the thieves and are a hero. Half an inch thick, feel freaking sick. Brother's a bitch, but you are a hero. If you travel straight into space, you'll have to protect the whole human race. A big task for a normal boy, but you're anything but normal. Don't let us be destroyed. Half an inch thick, skinny legend. Invisible Stanley, when we like me. A boy flattened by a bulletin board in his sleep. His name is Stanley. He is real skinny.